Okay, this is a video I have been mulling over whether or not I should make for a while because it's a little bit controversial, but I think it's a really good point to make, particularly because of the amount of utter shite I am seeing on the internet at the moment. No lick or idea or one line that you learn is going to make your technique better, be it with your fretting hand or with your picking hand. This does not work like that, and there is no way that you can try and use one idea to suddenly magically improve your picking or your dexterity with your fretting hand or anything like that. Now, one of the reasons why I think this is so irritating to me in particular is because I've taught hundreds of students now. And of those hundreds of students, the vast majority of people, I can tell them to do certain things that they might have seen in the YouTube videos, tell them to do certain licks, but they have massive underlying problems with technique that are very unique to what their playing has kind of taught them over time, and they're nothing to do with, oh, this, if you haven't learned this lick, then it's not going to work. That's not how it works. Now, the main problem, and it's a common theme between every single person that I have ever taught, is putting far too much force and tension into the fingers on either the fretting hand or into the picking hand. And I just want to show you how you can try and get rid of this and what you should actually be working on instead of listening to all these people who said, oh, learn 100 licks and then you'll be good. Because that's never going to work. So, what you need to do to start with is try and find the most relaxed positions that you can find for yourself when it comes to either fretting hands or picking hand technique. Okay? And the way we do this is we pretend to play air guitar. So for example, if I'm with my fretting hand like this, I'm going to move my fingers back and forth like this as fast as I can and just pay attention to what that feels like. There's no tension in the thumb, for example, when I do this. There's no tension in the forearm when I do this. All the motion is coming from the knuckles, not from here. I'm not clenching my fingers. Now let's do another experiment. If I turn my fingers like this and really put them onto fingertips, which again a lot of people will tell you to play, try and do the same thing. Try and move those fingers back and forth as if you've got them nice and relaxed, and you'll find that they're about, I would say, about 50 times slower than this. That's a problem, because if you're playing like this, there is no way you're going to get the dexterity into your fingers, no matter what licks you learn. Equally with the picking hand. If we take it off the guitar and we just move it back and forth as fast as we can, nice and relaxed, with a standardish pick grip like this. Now, this should feel relatively easy. I can do this all day if I wanted to. I could just sit this here and I'm not bothered by it at all. It's moving quite fast. There is no tension in the forearm here. There is no tension in the wrist. I extended the wrist in an awkward way to end up with loads of tension before I've even started playing. It's just nice and relaxed. These are the baseline points you need to be working on for quite a long time before you even start looking at some of the more advanced stuff like, okay, Troy, Grady's, pick turning motions, or pick slanting, I think is what he calls it. But all of these things are secondary to having a really relaxed technique, because if it's not relaxed, there is no way that those motions are going to ever become quick, they're not going to become fluid, and you're not going to get the speed that you want out of them. So let's take a simple example. Let's say I'm picking on one string. I'm just going to take this A string 5th fret. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick like this, take my hand off and do exactly the same thing. So hopefully you can see now I'm off the strings and I'm just trying to see if my picking hand's any different. I'm going to put it back on strings. These two things feel very similar to me, almost exactly the same, and I can't really distinguish the two in terms of the motion. So it's really relaxed, it's really consistent, and also I can do that all day. If I was playing a gig, I'm not going to get tired with my hands. Now, I can take this to any kind of lick as well. Let's say I've got something like this. All I'm doing here is 7-9, 7-9 on the D and the G string, classic kind of pentatonic thing. Take my hand off. I'm just going to do the fretting hand at the same time, but I'm not picking anything. I'm just kind of trying to get the motion down of what my picking hand's going to be doing nice and relaxed, and then when I put it back on the guitar, it should feel no different. And tension's creeping a little bit there at the higher speed, so I'm going to try and adjust that. Much easier, and that takes me a lot less time to learn how to do as well, because it's a more natural motion for my wrist to make. Now, let's say we take something with a fretting hand and I'm having trouble with. Let's say I'm doing, I don't know, something like this, where I'm going... and let's say my little finger isn't coming off fast enough, or I just can't get the fretting speed to that. Well, when you're in the gym, for example, this is a really good analogy. If you want to lift the heaviest weights in the gym, you do not start with the heaviest weight in the gym, because then, well, one, you injure yourself, and two, you'd get nowhere because your form isn't very good. So how do you practice fretting hand stuff and getting it nice and fluid? Well, you hover your fingers over the strings, you do something like this. So I'm almost playing a guitar here, I'm just touching the string with each finger. And I'm just trying to get that nice and relaxed, and then I just need to apply the smallest amount more tension from that position, and suddenly that lick works. Now, I have literally seen in my lessons, once I've started doing this with someone, them go from being able to play at 120 BPM 16th notes and that's it, to way up to 180. It's that much of a difference if you relax your hands properly and you have a really efficient technique. This is the most important thing, and the only guy on YouTube who really talks about this is Rick Graham. And to give him credit for that, that is the only source of information that I think is actually valuable on here, because of the fact that he's actually talking a lot about relaxing the hands and doing all that kind of thing. Everyone else just tells you to learn these licks and it will work. Now, I'll tell you what, let me show you why that's a problem. If I've got an underlying problem, let's say I've got loads of tension in this picking hand, I can do all the Troy Grady mechanics if I want to. I can try and, use these pick slotting angles, but because the tension's there, it's going to slow me down, and it's also going to make these motions really inefficient. I'm going to start doing weird things with my hand, I'm going to start getting tired, and it doesn't matter that those motions are technically the most efficient motions to make, because I've got this underlying tension problem. Now, the same thing goes for the fretting hand. I can learn any monstrous lick on the fretting hand, but if there's an underlying problem where, let's say, my middle finger is really hammering into the fretboard like this, then this little finger is going to get stuck, because if you try this, if you really tense this finger, just one finger at a time, and you try and do that same thing I did before, where you try and move these fingers back and forth, you'll find it impossible. Every finger has to be relaxed, and it's really important that that's the case. So if I've got some underlying tension problem with any of these, all of the rest of them stop working. And this is really, really important, and for some reason, I don't understand why, nobody talks about this on YouTube really. It's completely void of decent information on technique. What you should be practicing is almost trying to play air guitar at any point. So again, even if we're running a full pentatonic, I can practice it like this, and this is just me feathering the frets on my picking hand, and also just making this feathering the frets on my fretting hand. And then picking with the lightest touch I possibly can. It doesn't sound very good, but it doesn't matter that it doesn't sound very good, because I can always adjust that later once the core foundation is there. So if I'm doing this, I'm just really making sure everything's relaxed. And now that's really easy for me to play. It doesn't feel like I've got to be worried about my technique failing me there, because I've got this really efficient motion. Try all of this with anything you're learning. Like I said, it doesn't matter if it's pentatonic, it doesn't matter if it's 3-note string lines, it doesn't matter if it's, some Mike Stern lick or whatever it is that you're trying to learn from any metal piece. You could be playing bleed here, whatever it is. All of this applies to absolutely everything you do on the guitar, and that is the most important video I can make on all this, because again, it's not online, this is not what people tell you to do, and that is why a lot of people don't get to the technical levels of which they want to get, because again, this is not taught. The final point is, the reason why a lot of virtuosos And guys like, I'm going to say, like Guthrie Govan and Sean Lane and, you know, various other guys who are just like stupidly good at guitar. The reason why their technique is so efficient is because, in my opinion, a lot of this stuff comes naturally when you learn super young. So when people start guitar at like age 3, 5, you know, anywhere in the 5 to like 9 range, I think, the body naturally picks up a very relaxed way of approaching things. Just like you have no tension in your walking motions when you learn to walk, because you don't need to do that. The brain is doing something that allows that to be super efficient. And I think we lose that when we do things later on. So that's why a lot of those people are not telling you that this is such an important thing to learn, because they picked it up very naturally, and to them it's just kind of almost obvious that everything needs to be super relaxed, because they've never known a part in their playing when it's not been relaxed because of learning it so early. So I think it's really worth taking that into account as well, and just taking what a lot of those guys say with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because they're not aware of how much more difficult it is to learn this stuff later. I mean, for me, the picking hand only came in when I was about 24, 25, before that actually started to click for me, and it took an insane amount of practice. So it's one of those things where I think the later on you do it, the harder it becomes. It's still possible, but you've got to approach it with this constant awareness of relaxation. Give all this a go and see how it goes, and let me know in the comments how you do.